and thank you for tuning in to the Heart of Law podcast. My name is Mirena Umizaj, and I'm your host. Today on the podcast, I have invited Crystal Utley, founder and CEO of Bespoke Consulting and Capital. Crystal is an executive with over 20 years of experience in the health and the legal industry. She began her career as a nurse practitioner and transitioned to the legal industry, reviewing tobacco cases. In 2010, Crystal was hired by a legal administration company to establish a medical review team for the 9/11 World Trade First Responders settlement. She recruited 60 nurses, developed a review platform, implemented processes, and established quality control that allowed plaintiff attorneys to really settle out these cases through the special master. Over time, Crystal took on leadership roles, specializing in turning around underperforming teams. Eventually, she became the leader of the company's mass tort business, overseeing over 300 employees. And under her leadership, the company became the largest legal administrator in mass torts and personal injury. In 2022, Crystal founded Bespoke Capital Consulting, where she serves as CEO, responsible for fundraising, strategic initiatives, and client development. Crystal, welcome to the Heart of Law, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, from the moment that we met, I was captivated because one of your background and how you've come into the legal world, and two, just what you've been able to accomplish and being able to put together Bespoke Capital and just hit the ground running. That was so impressive that right away I thought she needs to be on my podcast. And so thanks for accepting the invitation and for giving me some of your time. I'd love to dive in a little bit more into your journey and why you like the industry and what you're looking to do in the industry, and make sure that people know who you are and find you as a resource in this business.
Absolutely. Happy to have the conversation.
Sweet. Okay, so let's start with your story, because you have a fascinating story. You are a nurse practitioner, and you started out as a nurse, and then somewhere along the way, you ran across the legal world and thought, wow, this is interesting. Tell me how that happened and the transition.
Absolutely. I was a kid that loved math and science, and thought I would go to medical school. Somehow that's a even longer story of how I ended up just doing nursing, and just felt really passionate about nursing. But as I dug into it, as I did the bedside nursing, which I loved, I was a pediatric nurse, and even went to grad school and became a nurse practitioner, became a pediatric nurse practitioner. I just started saying, is there more out there for me? What more can I do? Where can I take this knowledge and go to the next step and the next step and the next step? So I frankly just kind of read the tea leaves of my life and went towards the next steps. I will say that when I decided to do a career pivot, I was working in child abuse and had so much exposure to the legal field. I was constantly interacting with law enforcement, with attorneys, things like that. And I loved it. I really enjoyed explaining the injuries and helping them drill it down and dissect it, and using my medical background to help them understand. and frankly, that is exactly how I fell into the legal field. I was like, I love this part of the job. And so that led me to really think about, is there more out there where I can do exactly this?
I love that. So the business world is fascinating in so many ways. The business of law is this emerging movement. And I think you started right around the same time I started. And 2010 is when you accepted a job working and reviewing these tobacco cases and then the 9/11 cases. What about the legal world in that specific position was interesting to you that you're like, this is where I'm meant to be?
That is an excellent question. Uh, and as you asked that, I'm thinking back to my journals that I had at that time where I was trying to put together what I'm interested in. I think, and even reliving the pages of that journal, I love taking uh, a big concept and breaking it down into smaller pieces and processes. Like, okay, here's the concept.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get there? And there was something about, I can do that with my medical knowledge. And that's how I started. That's not how I ended. I don't have a lot of interaction around my medical knowledge and all of that because as I started there, I ended somewhere else. But yeah, I love taking big concepts and breaking them down and saying, what is the process we need to do to get there? So operationalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't realize what that was at the time. Um, and then the other thing I realized is that I really love training leaders and understanding the strengths of various different people and what they can do and putting that team together and saying, okay, here's all the things that need to get done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like reverse engineering a little bit, right? It's understanding what the big vision is, where we're headed, and then figuring out how to make that work in a corporate environment, which it sounds like the company you were at just kind of grew over time and, and became what it is today. Obviously one of the biggest administrators. So being able to be in that role, I assume you're able to see the entire landscape, even though you're working sort of at the last piece of a settlement, for example, you were able to see the whole cycle as it got to you. So the point of view that you had was such that you could digest and see what it took to get there and what needed to happen to close the loop. Is that fair?
It wasn't that pretty, right? It was a process.
Yeah.
I will tell you, when I first started, when I pivoted, it was not that simple.
Mm-hmm.
I started on the ground floor, and so I didn't have insight to all of the various pieces of what I was interested or what I would ultimately become interested in. I just was intellectually curious and really kind of pushed the line and said, hey, wait, well, what's going on over here? Why is the data coming to us this way? things like that. So eventually, yes, I was able to see the full line. But as with any new start with anything, it starts with a small piece. And maybe you get there, maybe you don't, maybe there's some other direction for you. Um, but because I loved that little piece I was given because I loved that, I was like, what else is there? I want to understand how this all works. And I just became this student of it, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, look, mass torts in general isn't clean or pretty, right? It's a messy business in a sense because you're dealing with volume. Um, and so going from, I assume, being a nurse practitioner into the business of mass torts behind the scenes, the administration, the data, um, and wanting to affect change so that it did affect real people, real lives, that's a big undertaking. But I'm curious to know what you think of the mass tort business in general.
In what way?
That's not a trick question. Well, I mean, look,
I
I
have a
think
lot of
that,
thoughts, but
yeah.
what topic are we talking about?
So maybe a better question is, let's talk about sort of the strengths and the weaknesses of mass tort, right? Because there is an underbelly to the mass tort world. And you and I have been around to see a lot of the evolution of mass tort. It certainly wasn't what it is today, 10 years ago. I
Right.
think one of the largest mass torts, in terms of numbers, didn't happen until BP. And then, those numbers continued to sort of add up in other projects. And now it's becoming bigger and bigger. And I don't know if it's becoming better, but it's certainly becoming bigger, and the litigation cycles are longer. So I'm just curious to know what you think about the business, if there is like, some kind of, evaluation in a sense of what's working, what's not working, what needs attention, because it's here to stay, right? And so
Mhm.
how do we affect change in a good way?
I think that the idea of processing a large amount of claims, being able to do that and adjudicate them and create efficiency is a good idea. Um, and when I think about the number of things that happen out in the world, right, that happen on a large scale, if I were a plaintiff, um, I would want an efficient process. I would say, as with anything, um, it has its obstacles. It needs work. If you think about the legal industry and where it is, the technology is not caught up. Which means the data is not caught up. So anytime you're approaching a large amount of cases in bulk, how do you do that um, in a just truly efficient way? So I think the idea of what it's meant to do is fantastic. What really happens, I don't, that's why there are people like me and you and that are trying to make it better and better. because it needs to continue to grow and evolve. Quite frankly, it's certainly not efficient enough. I rattled off a couple things: technology, data. It there's certainly a number of bottlenecks. There are a number of issues, but I think that's with anything. So I think it's really on the pillars, the pioneers, those that are just passionate about it, to say, how do we continue to make this better and better?
Mm-hmm. I personally have the experience that, while attorneys want to do the best they can, the business side of things isn't structured and evolved enough to handle the large number of clients and plaintiffs. And there is issues with breakdown while the litigation is still ongoing. And if the data and the handling of the clients isn't done right when the litigation is active, it makes it very difficult for anybody to step in at the very end and do the rest of the work and basically clean up the mess, because that's what you're doing. Retention in the mass tort business is through the roof. The dropout is through the roof, right? I think the typical mass tort firm loses on average 30% of the clients that they acquire. And it's not, as you know, cheap to acquire clients in mass torts. I mean, it's becoming increasingly expensive, right? And maybe this is where we sort of transition our discussion to capital and marketing and decisions that law firms make along the way to do everything more efficiently, more productively, and maximize the bottom line for themselves and for their clients. So I assume, seeing the mass tort world from your view at being in this role, running this company, you were able to then identify some opportunities, areas of opportunities, and then you transitioned into starting your own company, which is Bespoke Capital and Consulting, which is boutique capital group offering financial litigation finance, as we say it in our world, to law firms. So tell me how Bespoke came about, the intention behind it, and the types of partnerships that you're seeking to foster and elevate the business in the process. I know it's a big question, long question.
No,
I think you get the point.
No, it's good. I got it, and I certainly understood the segue and followed that. And you're absolutely right. Having done this for many years and kind of fallen into the legal space and fallen into operations, which I just absolutely loved, and was like, I'm sold on this. I saw a lot of things in my, sort of former life and where I worked previously. We did a number of various types of cases, worked those up. We, from single event to mass tort. And then, the gamut of whether you're hired by the plaintiff or you're appointed by the judge, or just all of that, and learn so much, and got to be on the ground floor of just some amazing things. Bespoke came about because as I decided to, after running, being the leader in my last position, and just from a personal level, being at a place where it was just time to move on, because of I had gone through some health challenges and just felt like it was time to just do something. Crystal, I needed to take care of Crystal.
Yeah.
And so when you have that time, and look, I'm always thinking of ideas.
Yeah.
I always have ideas or like, oh, wait, what's here? Because as I told you earlier, I'm intellectually curious. So, but once I truly had that time, I was able to ask more questions and then frankly answer myself and
Mhm.
say, well, wait, no, that's a real problem. Like, we need to do something about that or whatever. And I was not thinking necessarily that I would stay in this industry. I honestly didn't know, but then I realized I really enjoy what I'm doing. And I know this area and I have things that I've done. And I just have this strong, strong, strong background in legal administration and started to sort of piece the story together of like the opportunities, as you say, or the points of pain and things that I want to be impactful with. And then a good friend of mine who is in the space, I just happened to be, and this was a life-changing conversation, but just happened to be talking to her about the obstacles with funding and the obstacles that she was experiencing. And I just was like, tell me more. And the more we got to talking, I said, am I, with my background, I can help you solve that. And so that's how Bespoke was born, of just here is a need and how do we solve that? And I was just like, okay, Crystal, let's just, have some fun. We'll just do this little side thing and
Yeah.
work on this. And you know how life goes. It's like, no, this is not going to be a side thing. It's
I'm going to raise a fund and
I'm
it's
gonna
not going to
raise.
be a side thing.
We're gonna hire 7 people, and yeah. So I think it was a good idea, but I'll tell you, um, as I started to really, this thing had legs, right? And really to say like, I think this is what I'm gonna do, so, and it's the team, it is the people that I've been able to hire that see the vision, but also have amazing ideas. And so that has just taken it off. It has taken off just because, I tell anyone my greatest asset is not the fund I raised, it's my team.
Yeah. I can relate. I was sort of doing my own thing for 10 years
Mm.
and didn't really have a team. I always thought that people are problems, and I don't know where I picked that up along the way. And maybe that is true to some extent,
They,
right?
they absolutely can be. In some of
Yeah,
them are, yes.
but
Yep.
it's what
So
you
you're not
make it.
wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah. So I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to run a small shop and it's just going to be me and I'm not going to work on volume. It's going to be a few number of firms I work with and I'm just going to deliver the best service I can. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, what I missed the most was human interaction. And in that time is when I started this podcast. And then I decided I wanted to have a team and I wanted to bring in people that had the energy, that had the ideas, that had a new perspective. And so one by one, I started assembling a team, and it's been just as challenging because it elevates you. It makes you want to reflect and see yourself in the mirror a lot more often than you want sometimes. But that growth that comes out of that is extraordinary. And it's brought the best out of me. It's also brought out my imperfections in the process, and me really reevaluating my value system in like how I operate in the business and what it means. And I've come to the same conclusion, which is success is great, but the day to day and the working with the people you like and want around you is way more important, right? That's so crucial. So to foster the kind of culture you want. And I love the small boutique feel of your company. I try to do the same thing, although we're a little different, structured differently, I'd say. But culture is so important to make the quality of life as you go through growing a company, to make it sustainable and make it something that doesn't lead to disease and illness and stress and being out of balance, right? Which we both have experienced. So I love that that's the conclusion, and having the team is, where it's at. That's really great. Was it difficult for you to get this off the ground? I mean, it's fascinating that you were able to do it, and you did it in a pretty short period of time once you made the decision to start Bespoke. Was it difficult to raise the fund?
No, as I told my friend, I was like, I think the raising the capital is the easy part. It's helping you, it's supporting, like fixing you. That is the harder part.
Yeah.
And other firms that are out there. So the capital raise was not that difficult. I mean, look, there are not a ton of investment managers that have had this type of experience that I've had, that you've had, and so not that it wasn't not that there weren't obstacles. There absolutely were, as with anything.
Right.
But for me, the harder part was a different problem. It was, why are so many firms struggling to get funding? And, understanding that law school doesn't teach you how to be a business owner. And so if we really want to be able to provide capital to certain firms, they've got to evolve. They've got to change. For me, that has been the hard part of how do you meet them where they are, analyze, dig in, but also provide them that constructive feedback of here are the things you need to do. And then following up and, holding them accountable, and, just all of that stuff. And it's basically your standard operationalization, right? Of here's the problem. What are the steps we need to create and implement, and then rinse and repeat, so for me, and I think if you asked my entire team, they would probably say the same thing. That is the most difficult challenge, and rightfully so, because lawyers want to be lawyers, as they should be. Go be great in the courtroom, or with all these various things they're dealing with, but sort of the nuts and bolts of the back office may not necessarily be their strength. So for us, that's been the hard part, is to frankly sell attorneys on, here's what you need to implement, and then constantly following up.
So, what is the business model for Bespoke, and who is your ideal partner, client?
Sure. So we raised a fund, and we have a number of services. We can certainly invest in a firm, and that can be a debt product or equity. We can split fees, things like that. We also offer consulting services that can be standalone. We certainly have law firms that say, hey, I just need help on this one thing or a couple things, right? For example, we offer fractional CFO services. So we've certainly heard quite a bit around that service and had just standalone firms that just want that support. But we can also attach that to the funding, right? And that we do an analysis during diligence to just see where your firm is, similar to any other lit financer. Where are you as a firm, your financials, your collateral, all that. But we are also taking an additional eye to how's your back office set up and things like that. Do you have a budget? Do you have a strategic plan? Things like that. And so our solution is to be able to support the firm in anything that they need. They don't have to use our consulting services, but we certainly, after going through the diligence process, will say, hey, here's some areas of weakness. And if, in certain approaches, if we, feel that they need a little extra help, sometimes we'll say, let us help you for the next 3 months to get this cleaned up, and then let's move forward or something like that. But our goal has always been to truly help and serve and help law firms to grow their business and truly help their back office.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a number of services we offer. We also can do asset surveillance. We have certainly been hired by investors to who may not necessarily have the expertise in this field and just want us to check in on their asset, look at the collateral, look at, various things and just say, where is it? So we also offer that as well.
So you touched on briefly the debt structure and then equity. Are you doing more debt deals? Or are you doing more equity deals, or is it 50-50?
I would say it's more debt.
More debt?
More debt, simply because, we're new, right? We started in 2022 and of course had to, we raised the fund. That took some time. And then even to do equity, equity is so new
Mm-hmm.
and unprecedented. And so we have not really done that. We want to engage with it. We want to be able to offer it. It's our goal to, be a pillar in that space, but we also are very thoughtful and conscious of what's going on in the industry and the obstacles, the issues, all the things that are, I'm sure, out there that are being talked about, Arizona, Utah, things like that.
Yeah.
So we have leaned more on debt while we are just very, very thoughtful about how do we deploy this, if we even do. So we're very open to that as well.
And so in the debt deals, who is your ideal client?
Ideal client is someone that we can help, that doesn't just need the money, that is looking for more of a partner. And in the last year, that has been more early stage firms. But we are open to any stage firms, whether they're early stage or distressed but how we can support your needs. And we're a very silent partner. We're not trying to insert ourselves in the firms at all. But we certainly have a lot of knowledge around here's how we can support you and help you. You don't have a P&L, we got people for that. Just how can we help you get to where you're trying to go? Mm-hmm. And that is more of our sweet spot.
Is there a number for the facility that is a sweet spot? Is it deals under 10 million? Is it deals between 5 and 10, 5 and 20, or does it matter? Does it just depend on the client, on the need?
The sweet spot right now is between 5 and 10, but we're open. The sweet spot has been between 5 and 10 because that's really what the trend is of the deal flow. Doesn't mean that that's where we want to stay. But overwhelmingly, we've seen a number of just early stage firms who don't need a ton of capital come to us. And so that's what we have provided. And so that's been between 5 and 10.
Understood. Are there any standard terms that you can share with the audience, or is that something you reserve depending on the deal?
Definitely reserved depending on the deal.
Yeah. So they fluctuate. It's not like you have a fixed interest rate and fixed terms, like recourse, non-recourse. Are there any?
It fluctuates. And frankly, that's how we came up with the name Bespoke, because it's tailored to the firm. So we're open to doing whatever meets the needs. And so that's what our diligence process is, really looking at everything and saying, okay, here is the tailored plan we're going to put together for you.
And is your ideal client, when I asked that question, I should have been more specific. Is it a personal injury law firm? Is it a mass tort firm? Is it a hybrid? Or is it somebody that's trying to transition from one practice area to another? Do you have a preference on what type of inventory you like to see?
It's definitely personal injury and mass tort, somewhere in there. Okay. If it were class action only firm, we're not opposed to that. We actually, have some deal flow with some non-PI mass tort firms. We're thinking about that. But predominantly where my team's expertise is personal injury and mass tort. And that's where we want to stay, at least these early years. Mm-hmm. If it's a attorney that is looking to transition into PI mass tort, that's great too. I think that's where we would really shine, is because we get that, we get to start from scratch with you without,
the mess.
I wasn't gonna call it that, Mirena, but yeah, like, all the bad habits and all of that.
Yeah.
That
Look, I
I
do
think
this.
I
I
think
mean, that's exactly, I mean, as you know, I also do litigation finance. It's not my fund. I am a facilitator, a broker, uh, intermediary, whatever you want to call it. But I now spend so much time cleaning up the mess before I can even present anything to anybody because it's so much in the presentation, in the cohesiveness of the data that funds want to see that they have a system, that they have a way to measure and track, and have the finger on the pulse in the business, right? If you don't have that, how are you going to report back, right? And so we're spending so much time now. You're talking about consulting, and I started out as consulting like that as well, just kind of high level. Here's what you should do. Here's what a funder or a lender wants to see. And then we saw ourselves, me and my team saw ourselves embedded in the firm, working with the staff, bringing in CRM systems, bringing in software, bringing in talent, training, setting up processes, bringing in fractional CFOs and putting all the pieces in place so that it's a business, so it can run like a business and then be able to show why the litigation is going to be successful. So I share the pain in that sense. And frankly, I don't really touch now a deal unless I know and I feel secure and confident about what I'm presenting. And if I don't buy it, a funder is not going to buy it. And so I don't bother. Right. And I used to spend time shopping things around, and I don't do that anymore. Right. I know when I see it, who is the right match for it, what I need to do to get it ready for it. Sometimes it takes me a month, other times it takes me 2 years. But I have a little bit more control because now I know what the operation looks like and what we're able to show the lender on an ongoing basis to have that access to capital regularly. Because it's not just that first tranche, as you know. If you're giving somebody 5 million, you want them to be ready for a $10 million facility in 2 years. And it should reflect in their inventory.
right.
And if it doesn't, there's a problem. So there's a lot there, and I think there couldn't be enough people, women, I should say, because we pay attention to detail, that could be a great fit for this role, for this need, as the business continues to grow and the space is growing tremendously. I mean, there's more money coming in than ever before, and I don't think it's about to stop anytime soon. So that's why I wanted you on this podcast, is to be able to talk about some of these things and shed light, because most people, frankly, don't even know to have this conversation, especially the borrowers, right? They're a lot like the person that approached you and said, I don't know why I've hit a wall and I can't access funding, right? And what I need to do to be able to do that. What's your favorite part about litigation finance? Is there a piece that gets you going, that just
Um, the data.
the
I
data?
am a operations and data girl. I love it. I love thinking about ways that we can think about it differently, or what systems can we use, or it's a well-known fact that my team does not want me with access to any system, because I will pull a report and start analyzing it. And because that's my favorite piece. but frankly, that's what my favorite pieces were before. It's like I've just taken that love and said, how can I think about this differently and solve a different problem?
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it all. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to educate the audience. I mean, we have a lot of attorneys that follow this podcast, and I think demystifying what litigation finance is, and it's not for everybody, obviously, but for them to see who are the people behind the scenes offering it, working, it's important to take that stigma away and the fear around litigation finance and how it's there to prey on attorneys or law firms, right? There's a lot of that. I find myself on the defense sometimes trying to explain what it is. And so you educating, creating clarity, offering a white glove service, and really being able to show results and grow businesses is what it's about. And I have no doubt that you guys are going to be successful and will make a difference in this business. And frankly, in a biased way, I'm just excited that there is a woman run and operated fund, because I don't think there is another one that I'm aware of.
That I'm aware of. I think we're the first.
Yeah. And so you have certainly broken a barrier, a big barrier there. And I just hope that there is more of us doing this fun work, because there's a ton of opportunity. Why not?
There's so much opportunity, and I can't thank you enough for even just asking me to have this important conversation, because they're just not the field is not diverse enough. And we need more and more. And look, I was a nurse. That fell into legal operations that now has fallen into lit finance. So sky's the limit for anyone listening to this, or wanting to partake in it, and it can be overwhelming, but it really is about what problem are we solving. And then there's so much need out there. There are so many torts and litigations that need smart people. And that goes beyond even just the attorneys. Attorneys, of course, are very, very needed and right there front and center. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes to help bring justice. And so even in our mission, it is about increasing justice. Yeah. And how we can help serve that particular tagline. So yeah. It's a great discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been an honor and a pleasure, Crystal. I wish you the best, and can't wait to see what you do in this business, and certainly hope we can collaborate at some point.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mirena.
Thank you. Take care.
Great. You too.
Stay tuned for upcoming episodes available on popular platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.